Imagine this. You've made it. You've climbed the mountain, built the brand, secured the position, gained the admiration. You walk into a room and people lower their voices. Your words carry weight now. The house is larger, the watches glimmer, and the applause has finally arrived. Everything you once daydreamed about is now your reality. And yet, in the quiet moments between achievement and rest, a strange emptiness begins to grow. Not loud, not urgent, just present, like a shadow at the edge of your vision. You push it away with a new goal, a new purchase, another dopamine-fueled scroll through admiration. But no matter how many steps you take forward, it follows. You ask yourself silently, why doesn't this feel like winning? Here lies the contradiction no one talks about. Success, the ultimate prize of modern life, can become the very thing that destroys you. Not because you failed to attain it, but precisely because you did. Carl Jung once warned that the most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. But what if the version of yourself you've become, through tireless ambition and performance, is not you at all? What if success, in the way society defines it, is a betrayal of your inner truth? You don't notice it at first. The world praises your ambition. It rewards your productivity. It hands you applause in exchange for sacrificing silence, rest, depth. You wear your busyness like armor. Your growth becomes performative. Your purpose? Optimized. But in the process, something ancient inside you begins to rot. You feel it when you catch your reflection in a moment of stillness and don't recognize the eyes staring back. You sense it in the silence after a win that should have made you ecstatic, but leaves you hollow. You know it deep down when your soul whispers, "This is not it." And yet you keep climbing. Because stepping back means risking invisibility. Pausing means you might be forgotten. Saying no means surrendering ground someone else will gladly take. So you keep moving. But what if movement is the trap? What if the very chase for success is what severs you from meaning? Carl Jung did not view success as evil. He saw it as incomplete. He believed that what we project outward, our career, our achievements, our image, must be balanced by an inward descent into what he called the shadow, the buried self we disown to fit into society. But here's the painful truth. Success often demands that you silence your shadow. And when you do that long enough, you become a stranger to yourself. You begin to wonder, is the version of me the world applauds real? Have I chased visibility at the cost of authenticity? Am I becoming a high-functioning ghost in my own life? We live in a world obsessed with winning, but we rarely ask at what cost. The accolades, the numbers, the admiration, they feed the ego, yes, but they often starve the soul. Imagine building a life that society calls perfect, only to realize that the foundation beneath it is made of suppressed pain, unresolved trauma, and a desperate hunger for validation that no amount of success can satisfy. What if success, true success, requires not more effort but more truth? What if you've been trained to build castles above ground, while neglecting the excavation of the deep self below? What if the measure of your power lies not in how far you rise, but in how deeply you're willing to descend? Because in Jung's vision of the human psyche, every light casts a shadow, and the higher you climb, the longer that shadow stretches behind you. And if you don't turn to face it, if you don't dare to explore it, it will eventually catch up, in the form of depression, anxiety, numbness, compulsion, addiction, an unshakable sense that something vital is missing. And when that moment arrives, success will not save you. So ask yourself now, before the breakdown, before the burnout, before the reckoning, what have I sacrificed to be who I am today? And was it worth it? Because in the next part of this journey, we'll explore something few dare to confront. The hidden architecture of the success trap. Why we build it, why we walk into it, and how the philosophies of Carl Jung, Nietzsche, and others can expose the cost of becoming what the world calls great. Success in the modern world is not just a goal, it's a requirement. You're taught from childhood to chase it, get the grades, land the job, build the brand, secure the legacy. It's sold as the ultimate measure of worth. But few pause to ask, whose definition of success are we chasing? And at what psychological cost? Carl Jung believed that when we conform to societal ideals without introspection, we risk losing the self. Not the polished persona you present to the world, the one who smiles, performs, achieves, but the deeper self, a psychic totality made up of not just your light, but also your darkness, your fears, your suppressed desires, and the aspects of you society taught you to reject. Jung called this the shadow, and warned that when it's ignored, it doesn't disappear. It festers. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. Carl Jung. And so, millions walk the path of success, never realizing they are merely living out programs written by others. Parents, institutions, algorithms, capitalism itself. They wonder why they feel empty, burned out, or out of control, and assume something must be wrong with me. But what if there's nothing wrong with you? What if the system is broken, and worse, designed to fracture your psyche? The persona, the mask you wear. Jung introduced the concept of the persona, the mask you wear to navigate society. It's not inherently bad. You need it to function in the world. But over-identifying with the persona leads to a dangerous disconnection from the authentic self. Consider this. You begin your journey with dreams, raw emotions, ideals. But society doesn't reward rawness. It rewards efficiency, charm, performance. So you learn to mold yourself. You become what they want you to be. You learn to speak the language of metrics, not meaning. You pursue status instead of depth. And slowly the real you, the vulnerable, wounded, wild you, gets buried. Jung warned that when the persona dominates, the shadow grows stronger. It doesn't go away, it retreats underground, waiting. And the more successful you become in the external world, the more alienated you can become from your inner one. That's when the symptoms begin. The sudden anxiety that hits you despite nothing being wrong. The chronic exhaustion that no vacation can fix. The compulsive need to be seen, validated, praised. The deep fear of being forgotten. These are not flaws. They are signals from your unconscious, the parts of you that have been banished in the pursuit of success. Nietzsche and the lie of social morality. Friedrich Nietzsche, in his Rebellion Against Herd Morality, pointed out that society often praises conformity masked as virtue. Obedience is rewarded. Rebellion is pathologized. He called this the slave morality, a mindset that elevates safety, obedience, and comfort over power, risk, and authenticity. In this morality, success is equated with acceptance, being seen as good, respectable, admirable. But Nietzsche asked, what if those who seem the most successful are simply the best at conforming to a sick culture? In other words, what if your success is proof not of your greatness, but of your compliance? The achiever who never questions the system, who climbs the ladder without asking where it leads, who polishes their image while their soul starves, that person is rewarded. But the person who challenges the system, who embraces their darkness, who chooses depth over image, that person is often ridiculed or ignored. Schopenhauer and the Trap of Will. Arthur Schopenhauer added another layer of existential despair. He believed that all human life is driven by a blind, irrational force he called the will. This will craves endlessly, never satisfied, always wanting more. Success in this view is just one more illusion. The moment you attain it, the will shifts the goalposts. So even when you make it, the craving continues. You need more money, more attention, more milestones. And underneath it all is a silent scream. Why can't I feel full? The answer, Schopenhauer might argue, is that you were never supposed to. The will doesn't want you to feel complete. It only wants you to keep chasing. And society has learned to profit from your pursuit. The fragmented self. When you combine Jung's psychology, Nietzsche's rebellion, and Schopenhauer's despair, a terrifying picture begins to emerge. You are trained to become a high-performing fragment of yourself. You build an identity around your persona, bury your shadow, obey the will, and call it success. But your psyche knows the truth. In the background, your deeper self, the part of you that dreams, suffers, hungers for meaning, sends out distress signals. Depression, addiction, self-sabotage, these aren't malfunctions. They're protests. Symptoms are language. They are your unconscious saying, you've abandoned me, and I want to be found. The hidden architecture of the trap. Let's examine the mechanics more closely. The culture of constant growth. Capitalism rewards never-ending expansion. More followers, more revenue, more hustle. But psychological growth doesn't work that way. It requires stillness, integration, even retreat. Society punishes those who slow down. Yet slowing down is exactly what you need to remember who you are. The addictive loop of validation. Dopamine doesn't care if your achievement has depth. It rewards short-term wins. So you begin optimizing for applause instead of alignment. You become addicted to metrics, likes, numbers, performance. Your worth becomes quantifiable. But your soul cannot be measured in data. The fear of irrelevance. Once you achieve visibility, you fear losing it. You become risk-averse. You stop exploring. You lock yourself into a version of you that the world likes, even if it's not the truth. All of this creates a double life. The external success story, polished and praised. The internal exile, forgotten and grieving. And the deeper tragedy? The world claps while you fall apart. But there's a deeper question still lingering. What happens when the shadow gets tired of waiting? When the inner you, long exiled, decides to break through the illusion? That's what we'll explore in the next chapter. The unseen consequences. How this psychic split not only erodes individuals but slowly hollows out entire cultures. You can only suppress the truth for so long. Eventually the mask cracks. The performance falters. And when it does, the shadow comes roaring back. Not quietly, not gently, but with the rage of something long ignored. Imagine this. You've achieved everything you once dreamed of. The title, the income, the admiration. On the surface, you are what society defines as successful. But inside you feel haunted. Every accomplishment is followed by an echoing emptiness. Every praise feels hollow. Every day feels like a performance for an audience you secretly resent. This is not burnout. This is not laziness. This is soul death. It is the inevitable collapse that occurs when your external identity outpaces your internal integrity, when the self you show the world becomes a lie so polished, even you begin to believe it. Carl Jung warned that the more you deny the shadow, the more power it gains. What you repress doesn't disappear. It waits. It gathers weight. And when it returns, it doesn't knock. It invades. Self-sabotage, the shadow's rebellion. Have you ever watched someone destroy their own success? They get the promotion, then start showing up late. They enter a healthy relationship, then sabotage it. They rise to prominence, then spiral into addiction or scandal. These are not accidents. They are acts of unconscious rebellion. The shadow, ignored for too long, forces its way to the surface. It demands recognition. And if it can't be seen through healthy integration, it will make itself known through chaos. This is why Jung believed that neurosis is always a substitute for legitimate suffering. You were meant to suffer in the pursuit of wholeness. To feel pain as you faced your fears, owned your darkness, integrated your flaws. But instead, you pursued success as an escape from suffering. And in doing so, created a deeper, more dangerous wound. The result? Anxiety with no name. Guilt with no clear source. A subtle, gnawing sense that you are not living your own life. This is not just psychological. It is existential. The culture of the mask. Now zoom out. Imagine an entire society built on this pathology. A world where everyone is projecting ideal versions of themselves, curating success, hiding pain. It looks like confidence, but it smells like fear. It looks like abundance, but it's soaked in scarcity. It looks like freedom, but it's scripted, algorithmic, performative, hollow. This is not just an individual tragedy, it is a collective psychosis. We have created a culture where the mask is rewarded and the truth is punished. Where vulnerability is commodified, not honored. Where authenticity is a brand strategy, not a way of being. And this creates an echo chamber of inauthenticity. You feel disconnected, but so does everyone else. You're afraid to be real, but everyone else is too. So everyone keeps performing, pretending, polishing, waiting for someone else to drop the act first. Addiction, the silent symptom of success. Look deeper and you'll see addiction everywhere. Not just to substances, but to achievement, attention, control, productivity, perfection. Gabor Maté argues that addiction is not about the substance or behavior itself. It's about the pain you're trying to escape. And in a society that tells you success is the antidote to suffering, addiction becomes a byproduct of the lie. You overwork to avoid stillness. You overachieve to silence self-doubt. You scroll, binge, spend, perform, to numb the emptiness success didn't fill. But the unconscious doesn't forget. Every form of addiction is bad, no matter whether the narcotic be alcohol, morphine, or idealism. Carl Jung. Idealism. Yes, even the addiction to an image of success, of being good, high-performing, perfect, is just another way of avoiding the messy, beautiful, terrifying truth of being human. The hollowing of the soul. When the shadow is exiled and the persona is worshipped, something else dies. The capacity for meaning. Success without depth breeds nihilism. We are seeing this everywhere. A generation raised on goals, metrics, hustle, and likes. now plagued by anxiety, depression, and a sense of existential dread. Why? Because they did what they were told. They played the game. They climbed the ladder. And now they're asking, why doesn't this feel like enough? The problem isn't the individual. It's the architecture of the system. A world that values what can be measured over what can be felt. That praises efficiency over authenticity. That rewards obedience over introspection. In such a world, the very traits that make you fully human, messiness, depth, mystery, contradiction, are treated like defects. And the cost is staggering. The soul's final warning. When success becomes a prison, the soul starts sending distress signals. But not in language you expect. The signals come as a creative block you can't explain, a sudden disgust for the things you used to love, an irrational fear of being found out, a dream that won't let go, a persistent voice whispering, "This isn't it. This isn't you. These aren't failures. They are sacred. They are your soul trying to wake you up." And here lies the paradox. Success, when pursued without integration, becomes the most dangerous form of failure, because it convinces you there's no problem, that everything is fine, that you're winning, even as your deeper self is screaming. But not everyone stays asleep. Some listen, some break, and in the ruins of their success they begin a new journey, not toward more but toward truth, toward wholeness. That's where we go next. In the next section, The Rebellion, How to Break Free, we'll explore how to dismantle the illusion, integrate the shadow, and reclaim the parts of you that success tried to erase. You don't escape the trap by running faster inside it. You escape by stopping and finally seeing it for what it is. Everything in modern life pushes you forward. Optimize, hustle, accumulate, ascend. But healing begins when you pause, turn inward, and ask the most subversive question of all. What if the life I built is the very thing keeping me from myself? This is not a comfortable thought. It's a revolt. And all meaningful revolutions begin not with fire, but with clarity. Carl Jung believed that integration, not avoidance, is the path to wholeness. You don't destroy the shadow. You sit with it, you understand it, and then you reclaim it. This is the rebellion, to stop chasing success as a substitute for self. Let's break it down. 1. You must see through the illusion. What you call success may be nothing more than survival dressed in gold. Your ambition may not come from inspiration. It might come from fear. Fear of being ordinary. Fear of being invisible. Fear of being unloved unless you prove yourself worthy. Stop. Ask, whose voice is this? Your inner critic, always pushing, never satisfied, was likely inherited. A parental voice, a cultural ideal, a trauma response wrapped in discipline. Seeing this doesn't make you weak, it makes you free. Nietzsche once said, "He who has a why to live can bear almost any how." But the opposite is also true. Without a real why, the how becomes unbearable. To rebel is to see clearly that the why you've been chasing wasn't yours. It was programmed. And clarity is the first crack in the cage. 2. Make peace with the shadow. Jung wrote, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." Shadow work is the opposite of self-optimization. It is not about becoming better. It is about becoming whole. Ask yourself, what do I avoid feeling at all costs? What part of me would I never want the world to see? What truth about myself terrifies me? That is your shadow. And here's the secret Jung knew. The shadow is not just your darkness. It's your power. The rage you suppress might hold your boundaries. The shame you hide might contain your empathy. The fear you avoid might guard your deepest desire. By integrating the shadow, you stop being a fragmented self in conflict with itself. You become one. And wholeness is where freedom begins. 3. Turn failure into fire. Somewhere along the way you were taught to fear failure, as if it meant something about your worth. But failure, seen rightly, is a sacred invitation. It burns away what's false. It humbles the ego. It cracks the shell of identity. Ask anyone who's ever broken through. It was failure, not success, that woke them up. Arthur Schopenhauer wrote of suffering as the source of insight, that until we suffer, we remain asleep to deeper truths. So if your life is falling apart, good. That's your chance. Rebellion doesn't always begin in triumph. Often it begins in the ashes. 4. Define success on your own terms. Now the real work begins. You've deconstructed the lie. You've faced the shadow. You've burned the old map. Now you must draw a new one. What would I pursue if no one were watching? What would I do if success meant nothing? What does it mean to live well, not look successful but live fully? Most people never ask these questions, because the answers are dangerous. They shatter illusions. They disrupt comfort. But they also save lives, from quiet desperation, from golden cages, from lives of shallow achievement. To rebel is to reclaim authorship of your story. To live not for applause but for alignment. Not for prestige but for peace. 5. Practice the art of inner authority. The final step in this rebellion is to silence the external noise and develop inner authority. Jean-Paul Sartre, the father of existentialism, believed we are condemned to be free, that we are always choosing, even when we think we're not. Most people outsource their choices to culture, parents, bosses, trends, but the rebel reclaims the burden and gift of choice. This is spiritual maturity, to choose your values, to take radical responsibility, to stand alone if necessary, not because it's easy, but because your soul depends on it. What happens when you break free? You stop trying to be impressive. You become real. You stop chasing validation. You become rooted. You stop fearing the shadow. You become whole. And from that place, something strange happens. Not the shallow peace of comfort, but the deep peace of congruence, when your outer life mirrors your inner truth. This is not the kind of success the world celebrates, but it is the kind that heals. And the world doesn't need more successful people. It needs whole ones, people who have faced themselves, who've seen the darkness and didn't run, who know that freedom isn't found in more but in truth. People like you, if you choose. There comes a point in the journey where the masks have all been stripped away. The applause has faded, the shadows have been met, and the rebellion has scorched every false comfort to ash. And now, there is silence, stillness, something holy. You stand there, naked of ambition, stripped of identity, and you ask, if I am not my success, my failure, my name, my image, then who am I? This is not a breakdown. This is the threshold, the edge of a truth so immense, so blinding, that the mind can barely hold it. And it is here that Carl Jung whispers one of his most haunting insights. The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are, not who you should be, not who you're praised for being, not the version of yourself you constructed to survive, but something deeper, older, eternal, the self. The self is not a goal, it is a return. Modern culture teaches that becoming someone means accumulating traits, skills, brands, achievements. But the self is not built. It is remembered. It is reclaimed. Like a buried treasure beneath layers of fear, shame, and performance. Jung believed the self was not the ego's perfection but its integration. Not a polished image but a complete one. Not a role but the whole theater. When you arrive at this realization, it doesn't make you feel grand. It makes you feel whole. And that wholeness is the very thing you were chasing all along. The dark joke of success. Here's the cosmic joke. You spent your life chasing success to feel significant, powerful, complete. But those things were never found outside you. They were locked inside the very parts of yourself you ran from. All along, your success was trying to fill the hole left by self-abandonment. But no amount of money, status, or recognition can replace what only wholeness can provide. You are not incomplete because you haven't succeeded. You are incomplete because you haven't returned to yourself. And success, when driven by fragmentation, only multiplies the void. To know yourself is to transcend yourself. At the deepest layer of Jungian psychology lies something sacred: individuation. It is the process not of becoming perfect, but of becoming whole. Not escaping flaws, but embracing paradox. It is realizing that you are both light and shadow. Strength comes through surrender. Growth requires descent before ascent. True transformation isn't about becoming something more. It's about becoming what you already are, without distortion. And that self, when seen clearly, is not small. It is not just you. It is connected to something vast. Call it the collective unconscious, the divine, the source, the ground of being. In touching it, you realize you were never alone. You were never broken. You were simply asleep, dreaming of success while the soul waited to be remembered. From image to essence. Look around. The world is obsessed with image. We edit ourselves into bite-sized brands. We chase followers, clout, curated identities. But in the process we lose essence. And essence cannot be marketed. It cannot be liked or shared. It can only be lived. Essence is presence. It's when your words match your truth. It's when you look in the mirror and recognize the eyes staring back. Not because they look successful, but because they look true. This is what Jung meant when he said, "Your vision will become clear only when you can look into your own heart. Who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakens." You don't need to become someone else. You need to wake up to yourself. The final realization, you were never chasing success. You were chasing wholeness. That's it. All the striving, the proving, the climbing was never about money or fame or impact. It was about feeling enough, being real, touching something inside yourself that says, yes, this is who I am. And here's the tragedy, most never get there. They die as a version of themselves that was never true to begin with. But you've seen through the game. You've faced the abyss. And now, something is stirring. A deeper purpose. Not to be successful, but to be whole, to be real, to live as a soul, not just a strategy. A closing reflection. So here you are, still standing, stripped of illusion, rooted in self. Now the question is no longer, how can I succeed? It is, how can I live in full alignment with what I truly am? This question won't earn applause. It won't trend. It may even isolate you, but it will set you free. And that, perhaps, is the most dangerous success of all. To live awake in a world that prefers sleep. Let that be your revolution. Let that be your legacy. Not what you earned, not what you built, but who you dared to become, when no one was watching but your soul.